the reason I have this up is because this famous piece of art is in my local museum over here in Chicagoland. I don't know if you guys knew that I'm in Chicago. It's a little cold over here, hence the sweatshirt. But this painting in the art museum, this blue guitarist, if you look really closely at it, there's actually a painting underneath it. My point being is that if you screw up today, or if you feel like you didn't do a very good job, you can always just you just paint it black and put it in the attic and bring it back down later and paint something back on top of it 20 years later, and it could be your masterpiece. So don't feel bad if it doesn't come out exactly the way you want it. Keep in mind that Pablo Picasso did that too. So my high school art teacher was the one that said paint it black and put it in the attic. In fact, I have a black painting right here with a painting underneath, just to show you that I do make mistakes. In fact, there's a mistake right underneath this thing that I'm not perfect with every single stroke, but I only really display the paintings that I think came out really good and just hide the ones that don't. So that being said, while we're prepping here, I just want to make sure everybody has the supplies that they need. Make sure you got a pencil and this printout to start off with. It's a printout of the Late Night SCU logo, or at least part of it anyway. I took the inspiration from your guys's, from the logo. It was like a red flag background with this crescent moon and a warrior. So I used that to make a fun composition, and together with a couple of your leaders of the Late Night SC team, we came up with this cool magenta, blue, purple universe sunset. I don't know what you want to call it. It came out pretty cool and creative though. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take this printout that you have that's actually printed kind of lightly. You're probably thinking to yourself, how are we going to trace this onto the canvas, because the canvas is not see-through. This is where this little artistic trick comes in handy. And I see some people still filing in, so I'm going to try to take my time and go slowly with this first step. What we're going to do is we're going to take just the normal number 2 pencil, and you're going to kind of hold it up to a light and see a basic outline where you're going to have to fill in. And you're going to essentially make a piece of carbon paper on the backside just by shading in that little shape that you just made. So we're going to shade mine in real quick. I actually have mine pre-traced on this canvas before you. I'm working on a 16 by 20 canvas where you guys are working on an 11 by 14. I figured it'd just be easier to see. However, I did do 2 practice ones, one 16 by 20 and one 11 by 14, just so I know how you feel painting on a little bit slightly smaller canvas. So all I'm doing right now is I'm just scribbling on the back side of that printout. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be dark. In fact, the lighter it is, the probably better it is. That way it doesn't transfer too much graphite onto your canvas when you transfer it on there. Did we happen to have some kind of tape for you guys on the table for you guys to use, hopefully? If not, you could always hold it in place. And try not to let it move around too much when you transfer it onto your canvas. But step 1's a nice slow and steady step. So as people are filing in, you could fill them in on how to do it if they didn't hear me explain it. So then what you're going to do next is you're just going to tape. If you have tape, just tape it right in the middle of that canvas. We want the crescent moon to kind of be the main subject matter. So kind of make it so that crescent moon ends up right in the middle. Eyeball it as best as you can. A lot of people call this cheating, but I don't think it's cheating. It's just a shortcut. A lot of good artists take shortcuts, and that helps things go faster, helps things stay in proportion, especially when you're trying to do like a crescent moon. If you don't have a compass on hand or 2 slightly different sized plates, you're going to have a really hard time drawing that crescent moon, even though it seems like it's something pretty simple. So take your time, shade the back of that thing, and then tape it down. And then once you have it taped down or held down firmly with your hand, you just go over it with your, well, I have a pen, so you guys can see where I'm tracing, or so I can see where I'm tracing better. But with your pencil, just go over your printout after you've colored the backside of it with your pencil. And it should transfer. Before you get too carried away though, I am not going to, and somebody probably already did it, but I'm not going to transfer the right hand side of the crescent moon. Reason being is because that side of the crescent moon kind of blends off into the distance on the right-hand side. Have you guys seen this already? You've seen the completed version of what you're painting? Well, here it is. This is what we're doing. This is what we're working on. And all yours are going to turn out way better than this. So on the right-hand side of the crescent moon, don't draw that line because we're going to have this white kind of blend out into these pinks and magentas in the sky. So I'm not going to trace that line. I'm going to trace everything else except, especially this Spartan warrior guy. Or girl. It could be a girl warrior. And as long as they're nice and buff, that's what matters. We want them to look super badass. So let's make them look nice and buff and tough. And the feet really don't matter because the feet are going to end up in the silhouette of the rock. Again, if you look at the done version, you'll see that that's all dark there at the bottom. Oh, I did a horrible job tracing. I forgot to do the top part of this hat. That part's really important. That really makes it look like a warrior.
Can everyone hear okay?
Can everyone hear okay?
Raise the volume?
Yeah.
Yeah, especially when I turn my face away from the mic, you probably can't hear me very good at all, right? Sorry about that. But you get the gist, right? So we're just going over that that tracing with our pencil after shading the backside. Make sure it doesn't move around too much, otherwise your warrior will end up all over the place. Although that might be a cool special effect in the end. Or if you want to get real creative, hey, you could put yourself there. You could put a silhouette of a crouching tiger. I mean, if you want to get creative, feel free. Maybe you want to make that the Death Star. But for the instruction, I'm just going to stick with this crescent moon and the warrior. Oh, there was the logo. There's the logo I wanted to gesture to when I was speaking of your. I knew I had it handy. There's your little late night guy. I tried to make it look like that guy. A little bit. I think it looks like it a little bit, right? Slightly different pose. I realized I didn't trace my spear. But there's the, can you even see that? Oh man, it's hard to see. Oh, there's my little guy. I forgot to trace his spear. And then I just have the one side of the moon and like the tips of the moon drawn. I don't even have that other side of the moon. And then the next step, we're going to draw these mountains together. But the mountains, you know, they don't have to be perfect because nobody's going to look at your picture after you're done and be like, I've been to that scene and those mountains didn't look like that. I mean, we're putting the stars in the ground and stuff. So of course, nobody's going to say that. At least I hope they don't. It's kind of like a serene, magical environment that we're making, where there's going to be some sky down here in the ground in the shadow, some kind of universe and stars. And then there's almost like a mountainous cloud looking thing in the sky here at the end, which really doesn't really make much sense, but it's going to look pretty cool. That's the whole point. I bet you guys are really jealous of my pencil. Yeah? I got a fingerling and you don't. All right. So for the mountains, is everybody with me here? I hope so. I hope I'm not going too fast. I hear some shouting out. If somebody wants to relay messages, messages to me, that'd be cool.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, what's up?
Perfect. I think they're wondering if you could slow down just a little bit and maybe just give a recap for the people who are joining now of what's
no
what's
problem.
Been
That's all I need to know. You know, it's tough. It's really tough not being there with you guys to have an in-person event and be virtual at the same time. Although we've got a lot of virtual people here too. If any of the virtual people want to stop and interrupt me and ask some questions, I do have the chat window open so I can see you if you have any questions or need me to slow down or need me to repeat anything. Yeah, I'm gonna start over from the top. What I did was I took my printout, which is lightly printed out for you, ready to go, and I shaded the back side of it with my pencil. Obviously, you don't have to shade the whole 8.5 by 11. That would be overkill. So I shaded like just the area where the warrior and the crescent moon is, and I kind of held it up to a light so I wouldn't shade the whole thing. I traced the outside of it and then I shaded it in. And I took that and taped it to about the middle of my canvas, my 11 by 14. Again, I'm working on slightly bigger size over here when I'm demonstrating, but this is a 16 by 20, but you guys all have 11 by 14s. And we're just going to transfer this printout onto your canvas. If anybody calls it cheating, they are incorrect because it's not cheating, it's just a shortcut. And I forgot to draw my little spear here, but you can see it transfers really well, just like a piece of carbon paper. Just like when I had math class back in the day, they used to make us use carbon paper. So you got a copy and the teacher got a copy. Boy, those were the days. So I'm just transferring that over and getting the basic of that warrior and that crescent moon. Because again, that crescent moon is going to be tough if you don't have a compass or a plate of 2 different sizes. And we're just going to transfer that warrior and that moon. And together, I'm going to draw with you these hills. We're just going to look at our reference photo and kind of generalize where we want. They don't have to be perfect. I'm going to start by throwing one right by this guy's feet and hide his feet because that's going to be one of the darkest spots of our canvas is down here. It's going to be nice and dark and the silhouette's going to be nice and dark. So it's going to hide any of these pencil marks over here. And then we're going to have the mountain kind of come back in and over. And the silhouette of the mountain kind of goes up at an angle and over here underneath the moon. And then the top side of the mountain, which is kind of cool, is going to overlap. I think this is one of the cool far out things of the composition is that the moon overlaps here at one spot, or the mountains overlap the moon over here in one spot, but then they go behind the moon over here in the distance. So like the moon is almost part of the middle ground of the scene, which is pretty far out. It's pretty kind of cool and far out, and it ends up being a kind of cool special effect in the end. So I just threw in a couple of mountains. Man, it's really kind of hard to see my pencil lines. I'm gonna hold it as close as possible so you can see. But I just threw in some little mountains over there, just with a little squiggly line. Your mountains can be more smooth. They can be more hilly. They can be more spiky. Maybe they can just reflect the mood that you're in. So there's my little mountains. There's my little guy. I've got a little mountain range down underneath him too, where that dark spot's gonna come in. And we really don't need to do much more sketching other than that. There's like a little dark triangle on the right hand side. Man, it is really hard to see my sketch. I wonder if I change to this other camera, you could see my sketch better. And we're gonna try that. Hello, people just arriving. Welcome to the show. Hopefully your neighbors can describe what to do for this first step. It's not that tough. All we're doing is transferring our drawing onto our canvas and drawing some mountains. I'm almost done with the sketch, actually. Most of you hopefully are done too. We're getting close to there. Some people are just arriving and sitting down. Maybe I'll just go over there and take a break. No, it's all good. It's all good. No worries. I will take my time. So you can see this is where I'm at right here. The sketch stage, transferring the crescent moon, not this side of the crescent moon. I'm leaving that blank because it's going to fade from white into like a really light pink magenta over here. So I'm not drawing that harsh pencil line. If you draw the lighter you draw your lines, the better. But it should blend into the paint just fine if you did draw them kind of heavy. I had to draw them kind of heavy so you could see. Now it's doing this weird pixelated thing when I hold it close. What's up with that? From the texture of the canvas. I don't know if it's doing that on your guys' screen too, but it's doing these weird lines on mine. So there's my little guy. Transferred them on my canvas. Got my mountains. Is that all I have to do for my sketch now? Yeah. There's just like a little triangle here over on the right-hand side of like little dark spots poking in. And then maybe a couple little ridges underneath my mountains here. Just a couple little dark spots where there's going to be some shadows. I kind of just drew some jagged, elongated triangles there. And that's it for our sketch. So hopefully we can get everybody caught up within the next couple of minutes and we can all start painting. Does everybody have paints poured? I don't know what your status is on paint. Is it all sitting there drying next to you? Do you have all the colors? Do you just have one color? You have all of them?
All the paints are on the table. They have all 5.
They got all 5. Are they all drying out, or are they all?
No, they should be all good. If not, we have the paints ready to pour.
All right, sweet. Because we're gonna start off slow and steady with just some white and some pink to start off with. We're gonna really take it slow and easy, and hopefully give the time for people that are behind, if they are at all, to catch up. I'm gonna try to. What's gonna help me go a little slower is actually because I'm painting on a bigger canvas. It's gonna take me more time, so that should give you plenty of time to catch up. That's the whole sketch. That's the whole thing. The left-hand side of the crescent moon, the warrior, the ridge at the bottom where the dark is going to kind of take over the bottom, the universe, starry sky, and then a couple little shadows for some of these ridges. And then again, we want one of the mountains to come over the moon in the foreground in front of the moon, and one of the mountains to go behind the moon over here. I think that's going to make one of the things that makes it really kind of far out and cool looking. You know, I never took the time to introduce myself, but now that everybody's here, I guess I can do that now. My name's Dan. They call me Mr. Paint Party. That's my business name. But if you want to, you can find my mrpaintparty.com, or feel free to shoot me any questions here while we're working. What are you waving at me for? What do you need? Nothing? Okay. Yeah, you don't have to call me Mr. Paint Party. That would be silly. I don't know why the screen share thing came up. I don't want to share my screen. Stop it. All right. Show the sketch. All right, here, guys. Here's where I'm at. Can I get a thumbs up for people that are at this step, that are good, ready to move on? A thumbs up? Nobody. All right, see, that's good. That tells me that I'm not ready for the next step yet. One virtual thumbs up. All right, so that's where we're at. I'm going to start mixing some paints over here while you guys are finishing up. To start off on my palette, I'm just using some white, just some straight white. This is I'm not paid by these guys at all, but this is the brand I prefer. I like this Liquitex. Liquitex is a good brand that I use. Have you guys all done this before? Raise your hand if you've done this before. If you've done a paint party before. One person's done it. Everybody else is just an art major, right? There's a lot of people here virtually too. Good to see all these virtual people. You can chat. Feel free to chat, people. Say hi. Oh, can you? I gotta show your sketch. That's where you got. Can you show your sketch again? Thanks, assistant. My wife's my lovely assistant over here. Can you show my sketch again? What do you mean my sketch? Like this sketch? The main sketch?
We're not gonna sit on this because it's this canvas. Thank you.
So I traced my warrior right in the middle, like that. And then I flubbed in these mountains. I just flubbed them in real quick. I drew a little line by where his feet are, because he's going to be silhouetted. He's going to be nice and dark. And then a little line continuing up and to the left. And then actually it's your right looking at the camera. Ooh, I should flip the camera. Ooh, there is a way to do that. I need to do that. The carbon copy did not, I'm so sorry, the carbon copy did not go as planned. Did you not color the backside as hard as you should have? Too light of a pencil? It depends on what kind of pencil you use. Hopefully you got number 2s over there. There is a way for me to flip my video. Yeah, it's better to be lighter than darker. Mirror, here it is, mirror my video. Ooh, yeah, there we go. Now when I point left, I'm gonna be pointing left. Hey, all right. This is a great day. I don't feel so old. There we go. Yeah, but now I'm gonna be all backwards trying to put things in front of the camera. So there's my sketch. There's my mountains. Again, make sure there's a mountain in front of the moon and behind the moon. I think that's like kind of the only essential ingredient from the sketch. It's really a really simple sketch. Again, nobody's gonna be looking at your final painting and say they were there and the mountains didn't look like that and the moon didn't sit in the middle of the mountain. Well, duh, the moon doesn't sit in the middle of the mountains. Duh. Anyway, so all we're doing first is painting the moon white because the moon needs to be white. So that's all I'm gonna do to get started. I'm going nice and slow and steady here to get started. We're gonna get our brush wet first, which is kind of an essential thing. So I don't like using just a straight up dry brush because you're just gonna be fighting all sorts of bristles the whole time. You want to get your brush moistened and wet first, not soaking, dripping wet, but get it wet and then kind of like just wring it out. So you got, I call it sharpening the brush because if you do that and you kind of squeeze your bristles together, you notice that they come to a nice, like super nice point. Like this is a nice wide brush, but look how nice and pointy that is on the side. So I could use a brush like this, like super versatilely. Versatile, is that the word I'm looking for? Doesn't matter. I can use it in lots of different ways because I could use this as a big wide brush to fill in big areas, or I could use it as a little detailed brush using a little teeny tiny corner of it. So I like a nice wide brush. I might probably use this one brush the whole time, but you guys like feel free to change brushes to what you feel most comfortable with. Because some of the stuff we're going to be doing is some of it's detailed, some of it's broad. You're going to want to change to a brush that you feel comfortable. You got a bunch of brushes there, guys? Hopefully you do. Or at least one or two to choose from. I know when it comes time to doing that spear, that fine line on the warrior, you're going to want either like probably one of these bad boys or a skinnier, smaller version of this square brush that I have that you can put on that side and make and turn into a nice thin brush. Well, these would probably be some ideal tools. Hopefully you have something similar. But again, all I'm doing is starting with that crescent moon. I'm just painting it in white. So I'm getting some white on my brush, working it back and forth. Really, when a brush is loaded, you want it to look something like this, where it's about 3/4 full of paint. If it gets overloaded with paint, your tip is going to start to spread apart and it's not going to be a nice sharpened brush anymore. So you just got to work it back and forth. And you're not going to see very well this first step. You might have to like hold it up to the shine of the light to be able to see it. But I'm going to move this a little closer and I'm going to change my camera.
Yeah, of
What's
course.
up?
We need to see the outline.
Can you show the outline really quick again, Dan?
I could show you whatever you want to see. Sure, no problem.
Please and thank you.
No problem. Here's what I got going on. So after I traced that warrior and crescent moon, I threw some mountains in there. Pretty much just like that. Do you guys have the example printed out? Hopefully you guys got the example printed out. And I traced a line, I drew a line, I'm sorry, underneath my warrior going up and to the left. And that's going to be like the dark area underneath. And he's going to be silhouetted here in the scene. And then I added some mountains up here to the left as well. I mean, they don't have to be perfect mountains. They're kind of just upside down squiggly V's. I didn't do anything super technical over there. And really, you're the artist, so your mountains don't have to look anything like mine. Again, they could reflect your mood or your personality. They could be real zigzagged or they could be really smooth hills. Maybe you're more of a calm, chill person and you want to be more hilly and less mountainy. Somebody entered the waiting room. Does that mean I need to let them in? Admit. I think I admitted somebody in. Welcome. Well, maybe we should have started at 10:30. You guys should have just let me know. I could have started at 10 or 8:30. It's 10:30 over here. I'm in Chicagoland. I think I already said that. I'm 2 hours later than you guys. I'm staying up late. Here's an old man staying up so late. No, that's cool. It's the weekend. Plus, I got a teenage kid, and she's always up all hours of the night anyway. So I'm used to staying up late. But here I am in the sketch. I'm just going to keep showing my sketch for a couple more minutes because I still see people arriving. So, but step one, if you are ready to paint, you can go ahead and start painting your crescent moon white, the entire moon shape, and maybe even about an inch to the right of the moon. be honest, because we want all that white to blend in with our initial layer of light pink. Can I put my sketch down yet? Hopefully you're cool with that. Hopefully you guys got it. I am going to switch over to this camera so you can see this other, so you don't have to look at my ugly face the whole time. You can see what I'm doing. Here's my other camera, and I got a big cast shadow for my body on it. That's not cool. But you're gonna be able to see more what I'm doing in a second when I start adding some color. Again, you're not gonna see this first step because I'm painting white on white here, but trust me, I am painting something. I swear it. I am painting in my crescent moon shape with white because I want all of my canvas to have some paint on it, even though it's the exact same color of the canvas. But we do need all this white here to blend with our next color. I don't know how dry it is over there in California. It probably is just as dry as it is here in the winter of Chicagoland. But I need to add a little extra water to my paints so they don't dry out so fast. It really depends on what brand and color you're using. But yeah, sometimes you've got to spritz them with some water bottles or just dab into your water to increase the fluidity, viscosity of it coming off the edge of your brush. But I am kind of, and then the right-hand side of the moon, again, the right-hand side of the moon is going to be blended into that first color. So I'm not as careful with the right-hand side. And I didn't even draw that right-hand side line in my sketch. I left it out because I want that white to blend in. If you did draw it in, don't worry, your white should be able to cover over that line. If not, cover over it as much as you can. And there. Yeah, you can't see it. Well, it does look like it did something. You can see it a little bit. You can see it ever so slightly. There's the white on my moon. So before it gets too dry, I want to start adding some of this pink, some of this magenta. Hopefully you guys got a good magenta. Right now, you're gonna learn a little something about blending colors together if we haven't before. So I'm gonna take my little bit of magenta. And I really want a tiny bit because magenta is one of the stronger colors that you could use. I'm putting just a tiny bit of magenta over here. And I'm putting just a tiny, I'm not rinsing off my brush between because I still have this white on my brush. And I'm just using just a tiny bit of magenta and mixing it in with a lot of white, making a really, 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 really super light pink, a baby girl pink. And we're going to use that as our first color to accentuate the side of the right-hand side of our moon. Almost as light of a pink as you can make. And as you're working, try not to load your brush back up again. Use your brush as it starts drying up with paint to blend into that white. Also, you can lessen the pressure of the brush you're using, and you'll notice that just the tip of your brush will start changing color instead of the whole brush. And you could use that to blend two colors together. Because you can see I just put that one baby girl pink on my brush just now, and I used that to blend all the way into my white just by using lighter and lighter brush strokes and letting my brush kind of naturally run out of paint. And this is going to be really important for that cool fade effect that we want to get on the moon in the end result. Oh yeah, I can flash back and forth to my end result. So here's the end result. And you can see how we have this white slowly fading out into the pink. We want that to happen right now. That's what we're working on. Everything's kind of slow and steady. And it's not going to look really good until we're completely done. I noticed that because I painted it 2 times now. And in both times, I really wasn't happy with how it looked until I made that last step where I put in those darkest dark values. But we really don't want to bring those darkest darks in right away because it just kills the life of the colors that we're putting on the canvas. We really want to use black very, very sparingly. In fact, I very, very rarely use black in my artwork because it really does dull down the colors in the paint. I would much rather use a complementary color to make a color darker. For example, if I were using a blue to make a blue darker, I would add like a brown to it and make a darker blue and darker still until I got my darkest dark and use that as a black rather than black from the tube. But today we are using black from the tube. So we're going to use it very sparingly in much the same way we're using our magenta very sparingly as we're blending in the side of this moon here. And again, I need some water because my paints are drying up real fast. I don't know if your guys are drying up just as fast as mine, but I'm gonna have to bust out my spritzer bottle here in a second too. Plus, I like to talk a lot between steps. And that doesn't help with my drying time. Really should jump from step to step to really make the blending process go a little more smoothly. That's why you'll see me spritz my canvas every once in a while, or spritz my palette with water just to keep my paints from drying up to a crisp on me. Again, if you got any questions, just holler out or send somebody over the computer to unmute you guys for a second and let me know. Or feel free to chat if you're doing this virtually online, wherever you are, at home, in your dorm room. Don't get paint all over your dorm room. All right, so I'm adding just a little tiny bit more magenta to this pink. So I'm just making it a little more magenta as I'm going. I'm still not even close to the original magenta from the tube or from the bottle or wherever you're getting your magenta from, the creek. So I'm adding just a little more magenta as I'm going across, and I'm doing the same thing. So I'm making a big bold line of this little more pinker magenta. And then as my brush starts running out of paint, I'm lessening the pressure, and I'm using that to blend into my previous pink. You know, it kind of all looks like white on your screen right now. Not all cameras are created equal, unfortunately, and that's one of the things that we have to deal with by being virtual and not in person. There really is a huge difference in art in person versus virtually. That there is something about seeing art with your eye. But see, I just blended that pink in, and if there's some brush strokes showing, that's fine too, but I'm trying to lessen them from showing. I'm trying to blend them as good as I can. How terrible does that show up on camera? Oh, not too bad. It's picking it up pretty good.
Hey, Dan, we have someone asking about, is it a circular motion? Is it more of a stroke?
Oh, it's
Yeah,
really
we're
what's
technical down here.
that is, that's really tough because there's a really tough question to answer because most everybody is used to writing. You're used to using your pen and you're used to going like one direction and one direction only. Whereas when you're making art, you really got to loosen that arm up and paint from all sorts of different directions. It's kind of natural for lefties actually, because lefties are used to kind of moving their wrist out of the way while they're writing to avoid smudging their writing. So for lefties, it's kind of easy to switch your brush from one way to another, but you really gotta switch flip-flop once in a while. Some of your brush strokes are gonna go one direction, some of the other. I call it scuttling around. I think that's the technical term, is scuttling with your brush, so going from all sorts of different directions. But there is something to going all one direction. If you wanted all your brush strokes to be calm and going back and forth and smooth and going from left to right, hey, there's nothing wrong with that if you feel like that's how it's supposed to be done, because there really is no wrong answer in art, right? So if you feel like your brush strokes should be smooth and all together and really uniform, then so be it. If you feel like you should be using a smaller brush, then so be it. If you feel like you should be doing it like me and going all over the place. Now I've got a lot of water on mine. Mine's actually starting to bleed from the water that I'm using. If you want to use a lot of water, go for it. If you want to work flat and use more of a watercolory technique and let that paint kind of pool on the surface, that would be cool too. In fact, we're going to do that for one of our steps. Is we're going to do more of a watercolory technique here down at the bottom. I'm talking fast because we're supposed to be done in like an hour and 20 minutes. There's no way I'm gonna make it unless I speed through things. So I'm gonna try to be paced yet efficient here, getting through this canvas. But we've got step one essentially done, which is fading our whites into our pinks. I'm gonna blaze through the rest of this real quick. But if you ever fall behind, I do have options. I am recording this, so you can go back and watch the recording, although I might be a little tiny thumbnail. Shouldn't I make this thing really big so you guys can see what I'm doing? I think I screwed up the recording doing that once before, but I'm recording this so you at least can hear what I'm saying. And secondly, I have like a Microsoft Word document, step-by-step typed out instructions of kind of what I'm saying, along with little thumbnail pictures. So if you want to go back and do this on your own, or if you screw up tonight and want to paint this one black and put it in the attic, like my old art teacher used to say, it's okay. There'll be a fallback plan if you don't follow along completely with me. I'm just making sure I'm not dipping my brush in the water that I'm drinking from. I mean, that's really the most important part of the painting, is make sure you don't drink your paint water, because that would make for a bad time. So what I'm doing right now is I'm adding a little bit of water to my paint because it's drying up. But I'm going to start shading in my mountains over here. I want my kind of middle tone pink over here to start my mountains on in front of my moon. Oh, it's kind of like a Pepto-Bismol bubblegum pink that I got going on right now. But it's going to kind of blend into my moon pink colors that I got going on over here. And if you go over your silhouette, that's okay, because we're going to go over a silhouette warrior with darker colors in a minute anyway. And if you go over this border line down here, that's okay, because we're going to go over that with darker colors in a minute anyway. But as we're scooting over to the left with our mountains, I am adding a bit more magenta, getting a little darker. Getting a little darker here, getting a little darker as I creep over to the left. You see that really good, guys? I keep getting my own way over here. Adding a little more magenta as I creep across to the left. And a little brighter at the top, because the moon is creating some light over here at the top. I'm gonna go a little bit lighter here at the top of my mountain, my pink bubblegum mountain. It looks delicious. I actually really want some bubblegum now. This is a beautiful bubblegum pink I got going on. And as I'm creeping across, I should be at just about straight magenta now at this point. I keep adding a little more magenta to my brush as I'm creeping across, and I'm just about there. So I'm almost at pure magenta. I can have a little bit creep down into my dark area here if you want to. Again, you can be a little more willy-nilly with the mountain. No one's been to this mountain before. This is your mountain. My mountain. My bubblegum mountain. There's my bubblegum mountain. It's that easy. We're going to add a little smidgen of, and I mean a tiny amount, because this red is just about the strongest color next to black acrylic paint. Is I'm going to put just a tiny dab, like the smallest dab you've ever seen of red, because this is the only red that we're going to be using in our whole composition. So I have the small, can you even see it? It's just like a tiny little dab of red. And I'm going to mix a little of that with my magenta for my darkest darks over here, so to speak, on my bubblegum mountain. So I'm going to accentuate some of these ridges over here. Got a couple ridges in my mountain. And again, lessen the pressure to, you'll see this in just a second. I'm gonna hold my brush up real close to the camera, but if you lessen the pressure, you'll notice that just the tip of your brush changes colors. Just the tip, oh, maybe you can't see it on my camera, but just the tiniest, like 1/16 of an inch on the top of my brush is changing colors, not my whole brush. And I'm working that red into the left-hand side just a little bit. And some of that darkest dark magenta, I'm going to throw over here on the right-hand side too. And these couple of triangles that I threw on the right-hand side, there's just a couple of dark ridges over here on this side. There's a shadow coming through. And we can add a little more dark to that when we start playing with our purples in a second. But that's officially the end of step one. So if you got to that part, we're 1/6 of the way through, we're cruising right along. Circular motion, somebody asks, is a circular motion? You could totally do a circular motion if you wanted to go around in circles. I find that just going like kind of back and forth, I work from the left and then I work from the right and kind of do both. Some strokes from the left, some strokes from the right, some strokes coming from the top, some strokes coming from the bottom. I'm working all sorts of different ways real fast. And I do it so fast that you don't even realize, see me doing it, but it's probably better that I explain what's going on. So my strokes are going all sorts of different ways. You can blend a little bit more here on the right-hand side of the moon. I feel like this needs to be a little darker pink. Plus I got some water drips coming down where I squirted it. So So I'm just gonna blend that in just a little bit. Again, I'm lessening pressure, going from all sorts of different ways, kind of make a smooth of a blend. But if it doesn't blend smoothly, if some of your brush strokes shine through, that's fine. It's gonna make it look more impressionist. You know, it's gonna be more like Monet or Van Gogh. Yeah, that's what I was going for. I was going for French Impressionism. Yeah, that's it. That's the ticket, right? Am I just about there? Does that look good? I got the painting on such an angle. I gotta like look at it through my video over here. Yeah, it's looking all right. So how do I make this bigger? Spotlight. There, like that. That makes sense, doesn't it? Then you can see a little better. And I can see a little better. Everybody virtually can see a little better. All right. So that's all I'm going to show you. The rest is up to you. Just kidding. Just kidding. I'll take you through the rest of the steps too. Oh, there is a little bit that I noticed that I didn't do on step one. Oh, I'm glad I made this little outline for myself. I am going to work back for just a second into my lightest light pink. If you got any left in your palette, if not, it's okay. You can make some more. It's not the end of the world. You can always rinse off your brush if you got too much dark pink on it. But I want a little bit, just a little bit of a halo of light pink going around my moon over here. Just a little bit. I can't believe my voice is cracking already. I'm barely 40 minutes in here. What is going on? That's not cool. Just a little bit of a halo going all the way around, because we're going to work some purples and blues in here in a sec, but we need something to work them into. We need some paint around the outside, the outer rim of this bad boy. And now you can actually see where my moon is. It's not completely invisible anymore. But boy, is it an ugly painting right now. It is just really just an eyesore. I mean, if you were to hang this up, people walking into your place would be scratching their head like, what did you make? That is awful. But it's going to look good. I promise. I promise. We're going to keep working this thing until it looks good. Especially when we start putting it in the sky. The sky is going to make all the difference. And that's what we're going to do next. We're going to start adding some blue and some purple to our palette. So if you're done with the step and you're where I'm at, feel free to add a little bit of blue and a little bit of purple to your palette or plate or whatever you got going on your dish. Again, try not to get paint in your drinking water. Essentially, that's really my goal of every single painting party. As long as that doesn't happen, it's a good painting party. I have water here. There it is. So here is just a sneak preview. Here's my final copy of my 11x14 that I did for you guys just a couple nights ago. Because I figured, if you guys are doing 11x14s, I ought to try 11x14 too. Because 16x20 is just so much easier to demonstrate on. But I need to know the struggles that you guys are going to have on the 11x14. And the only real struggle I had, to be honest, was coloring in that spear. That spear was probably the hardest part, the little line, because you got to have a nice sharpened brush, a nice pointy brush, a good brush, a new brush, not an old brush that's all frayed and blah, but a nice new pointy brush, and you should be all right. But I think that's the hardest part of the project. And then, so there's my 11x14 finished. And I'm going to show my other 16x20, the first draft that I did for you guys. So you can see we're almost halfway there already. We got this. I'm used to painting hours at a time. I'm pretty sure most of you guys aren't, but I do occasionally put it in a 12-hour stint once in a while I'm doing my paintings. So if you guys want to stay on all through the night, I'm here with you. No, I'm just kidding. Again, if you don't finish, there'll be an alternative. You can watch the replay, or I'll figure out a way to get this replay linked to you guys, and or I'll have this Microsoft Word document typed up. I got to proofread it and spell check it because it's not the best grammar, because it's really I just wrote it for myself to follow along so I wouldn't miss any steps. but I'll proofread it and make sure that copy gets to Late Night SC so you guys can check it out if you fall behind. So the next thing is blue and purple. I've got cobalt blue. I've actually got two different blues. I might use them both. So I'm just laying some blue on my palette, just a little bit. Remember, it's better to put too little than too much, especially when it comes to putting paint on your canvas, because it's much easier to add more than it is to take off. However, I will say a secret weapon is a clean cup of water and a clean paper towel, because if you screw up, which there really are no mistakes, there's only happy little accidents, as Bob Ross said. But if you do mess up, a wet paper towel will pretty much, a clean wet paper towel will take care of any of those little happy accidents that you happen to make. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to use a little water to help me out with this process. I'm going to try not to use too much because I am painting vertically and it'll drip down my canvas like crazy if I add too much water. But I'm going to use some water to kind of lighten my blue as I go along, because blue straight out of the tube, I mean, it is super, super opaque. So can you take a look at the Microsoft doc right now? No, I told you I didn't spell check it yet. It's like, seriously, I got to grammar check it and spell check it. It was written, but I mean, it looks like somebody that was incompetent typed it. I fat fingered the whole thing, but I'll get it to you, I promise. Somebody just asked if they can get that Microsoft Word document now. No, not quite. It's not quite the time for it yet. I'll get it to you though. So next, I'm gonna start with my blue. You know, notice I didn't clean off my brush either. I'm just going straight to this blue because I know this blue is gonna overpower the pink that's on my brush like in a second, and it did like instantly. So I'm gonna use that blue to kind of start off, and I'm gonna start filling in my sky inside my moon here. And like there's kind of like the semblance of a cloud or something here in the sky. And it does get quite a bit darker, but for my darker spots, I'm gonna use some like blue mixed with purple. As I get to the edge of my moon, I'm doing that technique where I'm getting lighter and lighter and lighter with my brush and kind of letting it run out of paint and using kind of that dry brush. And hopefully there's some wet paint underneath. No, there's no wet paint underneath. But if there is wet paint underneath, you can mix that with the existing pink that's underneath it. But unfortunately, mine's all sorts of dry. It's so dry in here. But what are you gonna do? Hopefully the humidity is a little higher where you're at. Your paints aren't drying out nearly as fast as mine. But for the sky, you can really work your way back and forth willy-nilly. It doesn't have to be one way or the other. The night sky is really one of those things that's it's to each his own. It's to the viewer how it looks. So if you want to be a little more whimsical, again, just like we're blending around the moon, if you want to be more whimsical with your brush strokes and let it loose, feel free. If you want to be more controlled and be really smooth with your blending, I kind of do something a little in between. Some of my brush strokes blend, some of them are exposed. I kind of like that kind of halfway balance between like really tight and really loose brush strokes. But that's up to you. And it's up to the brush you're using too. It depends on what brush you're using. So I'm adding more blue in my sky here. Filling it up, and we can worry about blending in a second, but really I'm just worried about filling my canvas with paint at the moment, really getting my first coat down and not worry about blending too much yet. I am adding a little tiny bit of water to help my paints spread a little bit more. And it's also going to help blend with this pink color here in a second. Yeah, I'm not picking up any. This is all completely dry for me, unfortunately. So I gotta use somewhat of a different technique. I gotta really do the dry brush. I gotta let my brush run out of paint completely like that. So there's like barely any paint coming left off of it, and use that to kind of blend in with my pinks down here. But we can do that more with pinks and a purple in a sec, but I just want to get my first layer down. And it's not gonna look like perfect at the moment. It looks like red, white, and blue over here. It looks like God Bless America. But it will blend better once we get our purples out. So let's get our coat of blue down, because we want some of this blue to show through kind of like underneath our darkest darks. Like it's really going to make it look like there's whatever, like galaxy clouds in the background behind our dark sky. Ooh, I got a beautiful drip going down there. You see that? I'm gonna let that drip for a second. I'm gonna throw some blue in here in my middle of my moon. Working back and forth, just getting some color on there. And it looks a little lighter because I am using a lot of water to help spread it out. I feel like the paint just comes out a little too thick, a little too chunky. I think I'm just actually a watercolorist by nature, that I really like to use water as my medium. It's not the best idea as far as the longevity of a painting, because if you like use acrylics as watercolors, if I were to finish this and then like wipe it off really firmly with a wet cloth, I probably could wipe off the paint. So that being said, if you want to keep these forever and ever, a clear coat, you can get it at any Michael's, Hobby Lobby, craft store. A clear coat of clear acrylic when you're done will really help make it permanent and last a lifetime, longer than a lifetime. It'll probably outlast you. Acrylic paintings, acrylic lasts really forever. So, and frame it. You can totally frame it too. 11 by 14s are really cheap and easy to frame. Perhaps you just made somebody you're making somebody their next birthday present or Christmas present, or if it comes out bad, you could give it to somebody you don't like for Christmas. Oh. So I got a little dark blue. It's got a little less water in it now, so I got some darker blue on my brush now, but I need something to meet down with my mountains over here just to get this first layer on there. And then it's really all I need to do for my blue for step 2, because I want a little blue shining through here. I want a little blue shining through up here by this cloud, and I want a little blue shining through over here. The rest of it's gonna be like dark purple and blue. So once you get about this much blue, around this much on your canvas, you probably call it quits. I'm gonna kind of blend this little bit in here, even though I can't because my paint's all dry already. I'm gonna pretend like I'm blending this in. I'm gonna use my dry brush and just go over it a couple times. But these paints are drying way too fast tonight. Way too fast. I'm gonna do what I can. Yeah, I'm overkilling with the blue. I don't need to do that much blue. So once you got that much blue, you can chill for a second, or you can start mixing in purple for the next step. But that's about how much blue I want, because I want somebody to show through underneath these stars, and I want kind of a blue cloud through here. We're gonna attack this in a watercolor method in just a second too. So we're gonna mix a nice blue purple to fill in the darker spots of the sky. Maybe a little bit of purple magenta to blend with the mountains on the sky in the upper left-hand corner here. That's kind of an abrupt change in color from this pink to this blue here. And that's going to be our next step, really. Really focus on using the right amount of paint and use your brush as kind of like drying out your paint as you're brushing with it. So you can really get that dry brush blending tool to go between two different colors, especially in this next step. So I'm using this purple and a little bit of my blue here, which I'm running out of. I'm gonna have to refill my palette here in just a second. And I gotta take a quick sip of water. Again, I hope I'm not going too fast. Feel free to chat me or shout out over there. Unmute the mic and let me know what's up if I'm going way too fast. I'm gonna try to stay on track though. We might have to skip our break to stay on track. Oh no! So I got a nice blue purple here mixed. I'm going to use that to start finding and blending in my darker spots of my sky. You'll notice there's a darker spot. If you have an example photo, do I have the example? Here's my example. There's a darker spot in the sky over here to the left of our moon. There's dark all along the top rim. There's a little bit of dark right here that you're going to mix this purple with some magenta to get the blend in with our existing magenta over here. And then we're gonna do this all one quick splash at the end of that. So I got my bluish purple and I'm ready to attack. I got a little bit of water to increase the viscosity of it. And I'm gonna add that all along the top layer here and start blending it in with my blue. Oh, I need a squirt of water. Man, oh man, this is drawing too fast. Sorry, did I just spray you in the face? I'm so sorry. Oops. That little bit of water helped a whole bunch, helped bring some life, some of this color that's already on here. But again, a little bit of water in your brush goes a long way too. Just tapping the surface of some clean water will bring some paints back to life. And I want to have a darker spot down here too. So I'm using some of that blue purple, and I ran out of blue on my palette, so I'm gonna grab some more blue real quick. Oh. And I dropped the cap right into my puddle of white. Ah. Again, I should take my own advice and have a paper towel with some water. That way, if I mess up, I've got this ready to go to erase or to blend in. But there really should be no reason to erase. Anything else can really be covered up at this point. So I'm going to use a little bit more blue, a little more purple, and I'm going to start filling in some of these darker spots here. Going straight onto the canvas, letting some of that blending happen on the canvas. Try not to get too close to the moon with that color. I'm going to let my brush kind of run out of paint and blend with some of these lighter colors before I get closer to the moon again. You could always add a little bit of white if you feel like it gets a little too dark over there by the moon, which I think I just did. But I'm bringing some of those darks in here. I'm noticing some of my underlayers, some of that blue is kind of like wiping off as I'm painting my purple on top. That's all right. It's creating kind of a natural texture that looks kind of nice, and I can dig it. Again, we really want that whole top portion, that top inch or so, 2 inches, to be a nice dark blue purple. So I'm gonna get a little darker up here by the top and bring that purple down and start mixing a little bit of magenta in with my purple as I'm working down into the moon, really lessening my brush and really lightening the pressure of my brush strokes, and adding maybe a little bit of water as I work my way down, because that pink is for sure dry now at this point. So you're either going to have to bust out some more magenta or use a dry brush technique. I'm just adding a little magenta to my purple, just a little of my leftover magenta, and using that to blend in just a little bit. I got a weird angle looking at my thing. I'm really looking at it on the side. I've got to glance back at the screen once in a while to see what it looks like. It's not too shabby. We're about there for step 3. I really want to use some purple and magenta to blend in these mountains on the left-hand side. Where'd my magenta go? There it is. So I've got a little extra magenta over here. And I'm really not cleaning off my brush between, I really haven't dirtied any of my waters yet. I'm really not cleaning off my brush between steps. I'm letting the colors from the one step kind of bounce into the colors from the previous step. I'm letting my brush kind of get dirty. And now you can see how I'm kind of letting this pink bump right into my area that I painted with dark purple a second ago. I lost the edge of my moon. Here's the edge of my moon. Over here. So I've got some dark purple mountains starting to go off into the distance, kind of disappearing into the distance, fading into the dark sky. And now that I got that dark purple magenta on there, I can also use that to start coloring in my ridges a little bit. Add a little bit of dark to some of my mountains down here. I had a couple ridges here originally anyway. And then letting that blend with some of my magenta that I have here. If anything, I want it darker, lower, and let this lighter part of the upper right-hand corner of these mountains reflect some of the light of that moon. But again, it doesn't have to be perfect. Really far on that side. All right, so I'm gonna move back to my darkest spots because now it's starting to dry up a little bit. The parts that I watered down with blue have now dried. I'm gonna go in with like my darkest blue purples that I have now and add them where I feel like they need to go by looking at my reference photo. I know I want it really dark up here in the upper left. So I'm gonna add my darkest blue purple that I can make over here. And again, I didn't clean off my brush in between, so I've got a little bit of that magenta hiding in there as well. My biggest struggle tonight is the paints are drying way too fast and I'm not able to blend with the previous layer. So I'm kind of having to work with that. What I'm doing to compensate is I'm letting my brush run out of paint before I dip into the next color and using my dry brush to blend and using pressure and forcing the rest of the paint out of my brush to do the blending for me. I'm kind of digging how that looks. Getting nice and dark around the outside. I want it nice and dark in the upper left-hand corner there too. So again, it's just the darkest blue purple that I can make. I'm not using any black yet. I'm just using those two colors and make them as dark as they could be. Don't want to get too close to my moon. I want that halo really to shine through. So I'm kind of getting a little brushy around there. I'm trying to get that to blend in, really lightening my brush strokes. Going softer and softer with the pressure to get that to blend in over here. Oops, and I just dripped on the floor. Oops. That'll happen. That'll happen when you're standing and painting. Dripping on the floor. Whoops. Not bad. All right, so for this next step, what I'd like to do, and hopefully you guys are getting there, ready for step 4. Want to take a little break between this and the next step? You guys need a break yet? I'll take this as a no. We'll take a break after step 4 because we kind of need some drying time on our sky and stuff after this next step. What we're going to do is we're going to really slap the dark into the bottom part really rather quickly. And we're going to put a layer on our warrior. We're really, this step is really concentrating on making sure our whole canvas has some paint on it. I know it doesn't look perfect. It's far from perfect at the moment. But we really just want to get paint on the whole thing. So the bottommost part of our canvas, I am going to make with my brush, I'm going to make a little ridge line right here with magenta. Just a little ridge line. Right about there. Again, I'm going to work kind of quickly. And if you're working flat, that's flat, you'll be able to do this a little more easily. But I want to add a lot of water to my canvas. Not as easy for if you're working vertically because everything will want to drop and fall. But add a lot of water to your paints and a lot of water to your canvas and really throw this in really quickly. Slap this part in almost as fast as you can using water as your weapon. The water is really going to help it really fluidly go across your canvas. I did add a little bit of magenta down there at the bottom. I want that magenta to blend in the bottom really quickly because I want this to almost have a watercolor effect to it. I want it to be see-through where you can see some canvas through it and butt up right to the edge of our bubblegum mountain here. And fill that in almost as quickly as you can. I'm almost not even concentrating on how dark or how light it is. I'm just letting the paints kind of do their thing and using water to my advantage. Anywhere where you feel like they're not blending really good, add a little extra water and let it puddle up a little bit. Let it puddle up on your canvas. And I'm going to add a little dark down here, nice and loose. corner. Even the bubbles and the drips are gonna make some nice effects too, if you got any going on. Of course, we don't want it to get all over the room. We don't need to drip it on the floor. There is a limit to the bubbles and the drips you want to make. But I'm gonna use my trusty paper towel over here. I'm gonna make like kind of a light spot. I'm just gonna dab over here and make a light spot in my galaxy. And maybe another one over here. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just picking up a little bit of paint there to make a lighter area. And because it was really wet and watery, it made it really easy to pick back up with that paper towel. And I'm really getting drippy over here, so I might need to go over it with a little more darks over here in the corners. I definitely want it real dark over here underneath our silhouette, because this area is going to be just about jet black. This is going to be our darkest dark area over here, and our silhouette is going to be pretty dark too. So this might be where you have to change brushes and find something a little pointier to carefully fill in your warrior shape over here, because we're going to do that before we take a quick little break after we fill in this whole thing. I can't believe I just dripped on the floor again. That's such a doof. It might help if I set the palette down. I don't know why I'm holding my palette. Don't. So this is what my palette looks like. Hopefully yours looks something similar. I'm kind of bouncing around back between my purple and my blue and my magenta. It's starting to get a little messy. It should look something similar to this. You got lots of colors and colors in between. Don't be afraid to mix another spot for maybe like a magenta-y purple here that you could use to blend this part into your sky a little bit better. Mine kind of all faded together because mine's really wet because I spritzed it like a madman. So I'm going to come back in with that paper towel technique that I did a second ago and make sure that galaxy is showing through over here. I want kind of a white highlight over here just to make some cool texture in the sky too. The paper towel does a good job of that. But make sure you've got the whole thing covered and colored at this point. If you want to add a little bit more dark where you think it needs to be in the sky, wherever it needs to go. We're going to add some more darks here in a second for the next step. But while I've got some dark paint on my brush, I might as well throw a little more dark here around the moon. Just a little bit. And then a little more blue. I think I want a little more blue in the ground over here. And again, use water to help you out. I'm going to dip it right into the water. I'm letting that water help blend it in. When everything's wet, it's really easy to blend it all together. Making some of this magenta down here. I'm probably going to dab it with my paper towel one more time too, because I keep covering over it, but that's all right. I got a couple little ridges back here. I'm gonna darken these guys. They didn't get dark enough on mine. Just want to darken them a little bit. All right, I'm not going to do too much more because we do want some drying time between this and our final steps. Oh, I didn't do my warrior. Hello. When we get to this halfway point, though, after we get paint on the entire canvas, we're going to take a mandatory 10-minute break. Just because you do need a break, a creative break as an artist, you want to walk around the room, see what everybody else is doing. Take a bathroom break if you need to. A good time to clean off your brushes, refresh your palette if you need to. If your palette got way too dirty, get some clean paper towels, get some clean water. But we're going to do that right after we get paint on the entire canvas. So let's get paint on the canvas first. Let's get some paint on our warrior. We don't have to get a black to start off with. In fact, we want some color underneath the black silhouette. Again, as I mentioned earlier, black doesn't really have any hue to it, so it really dulls down the painting. So we want to have a color underneath, even areas where we're putting black, just to make them look a little more lively. So I've got my pointed brush for this one. I suggest you find a similar small pointed brush, because it is a little tough to get in those small areas. I wouldn't want to try to do that with my big wide brush that I was just using, which I finally cleaned off just now. I finally cleaned it off for the first time in our composition just now. But that was the brush I've been using on everything so far. And now I've just switched over to my pointed brush. So hopefully everybody's got something small they can use for this step. And I just mixed a little bit more purple and blue together. And I'm gonna be very careful, especially with this feather top of the warrior helmet. That's really kind of tough. So really take your time. Again, it's easier to add more than to take off paint. So do less than you think you need to and add more rather than try to erase. Erasing is such a pain in the butt. But not to say that it's impossible. Again, just a wet, clean paper towel with clean water on it should erase any new marks that you're making and leave the stuff beneath it. Yeah, that's the hardest part, is that little fin on the top of the helmet, feather fin, whatever you want to call it. And then there's just little lines connecting it. This is even kind of a little difficult for me. I'm not used to painting teeny tiny things. Although I am a fan of doing realistic art once in a while. It's hard to rush. It's hard to go fast and accurately. It's much easier to do a loose, fast painting, obviously, than a small, tight, realistic, fast painting. I just added a little drip of water to my paints because I feel like they're not viscous enough. They're just not flowing off my brush the way they should. Which is really the beauty of using acrylic paints, is that you could use water as a medium. But they also do make acrylic medium as well. For those of you who are art majors, you already know that, but there's tubes of just medium. It's just clear paint essentially. And you could use that instead of water. Come on, focus. Here you go. Oh, this is varnish. Darn it. I got another one with medium on it, I swear. Here we go. Focus. There you go, acrylic medium. So you could use this instead of water. Another benefit of this, you'll notice, focus. It says slow dry fluid medium. So it's going to work like water, but also slow down the dry time, which would be ideal for me in my situation where it's so dry in here. My paints are drying in an instant. So I could use that slow dry medium along with my paints instead of water. And it helps out tremendously. Although medium is a little expensive. So there's pluses and minuses to using it. I'm just making sure this warrior is looking buff. It could be a guy, it could be a girl, doesn't matter. As long as they got some muscles. You can see a tricep there. I can see a bicep. I can see a buff forearm. Most of it's going to be darkened, so you don't have to worry about how your strokes look on him, her, them, whatever. There we go. He's looking good. Studley. Definitely the slowest, hardest part is this little warrior. And I have to admit, it's even harder for you guys because you're working on an 11 by 14 and I'm working on a 16 by 20 right now. So really take your time, no rush. Right after you finish your warrior, we're going to take a break for a couple minutes. And I'd like to see everybody take a break over there. I'd like you to take a second to look around, see what other people are doing. Borrow their techniques, ask them like, oh, how did you do that? How did you make your pink blend so good with your magenta? Or maybe you could steal some ideas from them. That's the way the great masters worked. Manet stole from Monet and vice versa. You gotta borrow techniques that you think are exemplary to make yourself a better artist. So feel free to take a lap around the room when it's time for a break, when you're done filling in your warrior, your little silhouette here. And again, the paintings, my painting, I don't know about you, but I don't think it looks really great right now. They're not going to look really great until we add our darkest dark in there. It's going to look really cool when we start adding the outer space and the stars and stuff. But at the moment, yeah, I'm not liking how mine looks, especially on camera. Boy, oh boy, blah. So if you feel that yours is looking blah, you're on the right track. You're doing it right. You're right along the same lines as your instructor here. So this little fist is a pain in the butt, I gotta say. This little hand right here. Boy, oh boy. Make sure your brush is pointy. And if you overfill your brush with paint, wring it out on your paper towel so it comes to a point again. My warrior's got too pointy of a chin. I'll fix this chin here. There, and then this is the part that I like the least, is this spear, this straight spear right here. And it's even more difficult because of the position I'm in trying to do it virtually here. But I'm gonna try my hardest, hold my breath. There we go. You'll see that in the example, the one example that I did, I put a little ribbon on the end of his spear. I don't know, I thought it looked cool. It looked like there was a wind blowing. My spear looks super crooked. No, it doesn't? Oh, it's just the angle I'm looking at it, okay. Let's see, why does it look so crooked? It looks a little crooked. Again, it's easier to make it too thin at first and then come back and make it a little thicker. So make it too thin the first pass. And then add a little extra. All right, there we go. I think that's it for my guy right there. So I'm just using the extra purple on my brush over there. You don't have to do this. I'm just using it up. There we go. There's our breaking point. That's the end of step 4. We did it. We've got the topmost part of our sky. That dark color, pretty much the same dark as our dark warrior over here. We found our darkest spots up here and the topmost portion of our sky down here. We slapped in real quick using some water to help us out. We slapped in some cool textured sky over here. Mine's completely dry. Can I bring some texture to mine again? I took that texture out and I want to put some texture back in. No, that's dry. So I'm not putting texture back into mine, but you did see that I dabbed it a little bit earlier with that paper towel and added a little bit of texture there to create kind of a glowing spot. I kind of ruined it on this one, but hopefully you got preserved some of your guys's. You can always dab some back in with white on your paper towel if you feel like it's lacking. In fact, you know what? I think I'm going to do that before break real quick. I'm just going to take a little bit of white. I'm going to water it down, make a little puddle. I'm going to see if I can use my paper towel as a little dab tool. Watered it down too much, don't even see it. I essentially wanted to subtract paint over here, but mine dried so darn fast that I didn't even get a chance to. So I'm just using my paper towel, kind of like a little stamp. And adding some texture there, moving the paper towel around a little bit so it doesn't get too blotted in one spot. There you go, that's better. There, now I've got a highlight that I wanted in the first place. So we got a mandatory break coming up. I'm gonna make you guys stop, but hopefully I want you guys to have the whole bottom part covered and your warrior covered before I make you stop. So can you raise your hand? Who needs like another 5 minutes or so? Who needs some more time? Yeah, everybody? All right, take your time, take another 5 minutes or so, keep painting, but then mandatory break after that 5 minutes. Like force yourself to take a break, let these paints dry underneath. I'm gonna paint along with you for about 5 more minutes. And I'm totally covering up that stupid paper towel thing I just did. Now I'm just gonna try to blend it in a little better. It didn't blend very good. It stood out too much. Oh, you see my secret weapon just now. Don't do that. I'm not teaching you to do that. Don't use your finger. Don't use your finger to blend paint. I'm not showing you, I'm not teaching you to do that. There, I just wanted to blend those paper towel dabs in a little bit so they didn't look so much like paper towel dabs, you know? Right? I do have some crazy drips happening in that section, but we're gonna cope with it. I'm gonna deal with it. I think we're on par, we're on track. Look at, we're close. Look how close we are. Almost stretch. I'm gonna throw a little more dark over here. This is gonna get really dark here in just a second, so I might as well throw a little bit over here while I've got some on my brush and my palette. Yeah. All right. I'm gonna pause there. I'm gonna go ahead and take 13 minutes. I've got a timer right here. I'm taking 13 minutes. You don't have to take 13 minutes, but I recommend that you take, if you have to, take 5 more minutes of painting and then force yourself to stop and give yourself an 8-minute break. Take a look around the room at what everybody else is doing, steal some ideas, get some tips, rinse your brush, make sure you got clean water for the end process, make sure you got a clean paper towel. And yeah, I'm gonna just pause for just 1 second. I'm gonna mute myself. You guys are probably tired of hearing me talk anyway. And yeah, take your time, take a break. I'll be back in 12 minutes and 30 seconds. So I'm not quite ready to start back off yet, but I wanted to share this with you guys. I went to the, when I first started talking, I was talking about that Blue Guitarist by Pablo Picasso. And I happened to go to the Art Institute of Chicago's website, and they have, how cool is this? How cool is this? How can I share my screen? Share my screen. Well, let me share my screen. Share. One person can share. There we go. Ah, this is so cool, guys. Look at this. So they got this picture of the Blue Guitarist right here, right? And if you zoom in real close, you can actually see the outline of the woman underneath. Her eyes are actually right here, just above the neck of the guitarist. I don't know if you guys could see that in the slideshow. But what's even cooler is they have a picture of the X-ray of it. What? And there she is. You can see her right underneath. And as the years go by, the blue on top is kind of fading. You can kind of see her more and more. But she's kind of seated. You can actually see her toes right here. And she's right there. How freaking cool is that? But yeah, just wanted to share that with you guys. I thought that was pretty sweet. So we got about 3 minutes or so left in our break. So make your way back to your seat when you get a chance. Make sure you got some clean water, clean paper towel. Yeah, about 3 minutes we got. So anyway, yeah, I thought that was cool. I could stop my screen share now. Or maybe I should leave this up so other people can see. How cool is that? They actually got the X-ray picture of it. That's so neat. And there she is right there. Almost in the same place as the other figure, which is really weird. and Picasso was probably just like rolling in his grave because we're showing off an artwork that he didn't want to see. He wanted that painted over and not shown to anybody. So let's stop sharing that before Picasso gets mad. The ghost of Picasso. This would be an awesome time. If anybody's got any questions, go ahead and type them in the chat. Let me know what's up. Let me know your struggles. Let me know if I can help you with anything. I don't know if did you guys get the step-by-step printout sheet or no? Or did you just get the main reference photo? I've got this for the people that are virtually online. I've got this document. This might help in your just attached a JPEG of the steps, all 6 steps, kind of step by step that I use also in my Microsoft Word document. Instead of just looking at the end product, so you can see the steps in between. Well, and then you can see what's kind of upcoming. Next, we're going to put the darkest darks into the sky, which actually is relatively simple. We're going to mix just a touch of that black with our blues and purples and add to the sky, both on the top and the bottom, make it look more sky-like. And then we're on the home stretch. Then all we have to do is add the stars. So really, I think we're more than halfway there, really. We did most of the hard work. Now it's just really time to add some details, really kind of make it look how we want it to look. In about a minute and a half, we're gonna get started again. Remember, nothing has to be perfect. You can always go back up and touch it up later. We're gonna try not to go too much overtime, but we might go about 10 minutes overtime. That's cool with me if it's cool with you guys.
Hey, Dan, it sounds good. We just wanted to give you a time check that we have about 20 minutes left.
Yeah.
So if we go a little bit over, that's fine, but we would like to keep it to about 20 more minutes.
Yeah, we're gonna shoot for 20, but people are probably gonna still be rushing at the end.
Sounds good. Thank you.
No problem. No problem. All right, so in about 1 minute, 30 seconds, about 30 seconds, we're gonna get started back up. So make sure you're back in the seat. Make sure you got your brushes ready to go. Couple of really hard steps coming up here. Really difficult. Now we're gonna start by mixing some magenta. Get some fresh colors on this palette. I'm gonna start by getting some fresh magenta, some fresh blue, some fresh purple. If you don't, that is if you don't have any left. Most of mine is just about. I finished most of my purple, most of my blue. Whoa, there's my timer to get started. I didn't mean it to be that loud. Jeepers creepers. Oh, it's got paint all over my mouse. Oh no. Well, that'll happen. That'll happen. So here we go, guys. Let's get cranking. Let's do this. Let's do this home stretch. If I can find my brushes. I was telling you guys to make sure you had clean water and paper towels, and I didn't do the same thing for myself. Oh. That's right. I'm on top of it. This water is mostly clean. We'll make it work. So I've got some fresh blue, some fresh purple, some fresh magenta, and we're gonna blend all this stuff together and make it look really good. Oh, and the last color that we do need for this step is black, and we want very little because black has a tendency to overpower at this step, and we really don't want it to take over our entire canvas. We want a lot of this color showing through to the very end. Black is really just gonna be accentuating things. You'll see in a second how strong this black is gonna be. So I'm going to take my purple, my dark purple, and my dark blue, and make my nice dark blue purple again, as dark and as blue as I make it. And you'll notice when you add it to your canvas this time around, it's going to look a lot darker because we're not mixing it with a whole bunch of water. And look how dark that dark blue purple is coming out. I'm going to do that same thing. I'm kind of working back and forth, left to right. In this case, using my dry brush and letting it blend in and making my darkest darks up here. And just adding a little more of that blue purple because I'm going to add a really dark blue purple in a sec, the one that I mixed with black. So I just got blue and purple on my brush right now, and I'm kind of accentuating the edge of where I want some clouds and where I want some dark showing through here by the moon. Although I'm not going to go all the way dark, I'm going to let some of that blue show through, a little bit of that blue show through. I think that's really cool underneath. And then I'm going to let my brush slowly run out of paint. Use that dry brush. Go. Add some over here. Mash the paint out of it there. And now I'm going to add just a touch, a small, tiny, teeny corner of a brush of black. Look how small of amount of black I added to my brush, just a tiny corner of it, and mixing that with my bluish purple, I'm getting a really dark bluish purple. So in fact, my purple's kind of overpowering, so I'm adding a little extra blue to kind of compensate, but it's a really dark bluish purple. It's dang near black, and I'm going to use that to start working into here. Oh, I just realized I hit the painting over here. Let me move this bad boy. Get out of here. And I'm going to find these darks here. Some darks down here at the bottom too. I really want my darkest dark to start over here on the left-hand side and work its way into this because I want this area to still be glowing. I really want the dark to kind of follow the crest of this mountain here. So right around the edge of this mountain, I'm gonna have my dark bluish purple. Brush it into this color down here. Back and forth again, a lot of back and forth strokes in this one, a lot of left and right to help blend this stuff in. It's gonna be really dark down here at the bottom. All my darkest dark blue purple down there too. Creating that bottommost ridge. Hopefully you guys got some kind of tablecloths on your table and you're not getting it all over the table. And now I'm going to mix a little bit more dark into it, a little more black. So now it's essentially black, but with just a tiny bit of color in it. And I'm starting in the upper right-hand corner. And I'm going to really slowly work it down, really slowly as possible. Really let your brush run out of paint because we don't want to get that black all the way down into our pink. We just want it to touch our blues and our dark blues and purples. We don't want it to get much further down than that. We want a little black in the upper left-hand corner. Really pop those darks in the upper left. I'm gonna add a little of my darkest dark over here underneath my cloud. I'm gonna have a little bit of it. Kind of going through, fading into my dark blue purples. Let my brush run out of paint. Use the same technique we've been using all along. Let your brush run out of paint. Use less and less pressure on your brush. And use that to blend into those existing colors that are there. Ooh, in fact, I got a little too dark there. I got a little too much of a baby blue here in the sky. On the computer, it looks a little more richer blue, but here's it's a little baby blue in real life. So I'm just gonna add a little extra blue to that area. It just stayed a little too light in my painting. So I'm just adding a little blue to that area. Let it blend in. And everybody's is a little different now at this point. Some people probably don't even need a little extra blue. Some of you maybe even got a little too dark to start off with. But now's the time to kind of tie it all together, to feel like where you need a little extra dark, where you need a little extra blue, where you feel like you need a little extra purple. I think I'm almost there really in my sky. I kind of like how it looks. Maybe a little extra blue over here, not too much, just to blend with this blue and purple over here. A little too dark. I'm gonna brush a little bit off of my paper towel here. I really want to dry brush it here. Another good trick to dry brushing. If you got too much paint on your brush, you can always brush it off on a paper towel or your t-shirt or whatever, and then use your dry brush that way. I'm gonna use straight blue and purple here. Blend. I don't want to go too far down because I don't like hitting this. I don't like hitting this purple spot that I already made here, but I'm gonna try my best to blend in here. I'm not gonna spend too much time over there struggling. I do want a nice glow over here, so I do want to have some of that bright color show through. I really don't want to overdo it over here, and I feel like I already am, but I think that'll do it. So I got my glow of the moon. The glow of my moon it looks really bright here on camera, but this is actually a really light pink. I'm gonna switch cameras for just a second so you can kind of get more of just a different view of the colors on my canvas. They are slightly different than what you see on that camera. I can't say that this camera is any better. This camera made it look really, really blue. Just sucked all the purple right out of it. Maybe did I bring the camera closer last time and it helped it focus? There you go. You can see how close my pink is to that moon. My white isn't nearly out at that far. That I do have some pink relatively close to the moon there. So we're really getting there. Any spot that feels like it needs to be blended in a little bit more, feel free. I feel like the top edge of this mountain needs to be just a little accentuated on mine. So I'm going to use some of my dark color to just crispen up the edge of this. The last dark thing that we need to make is, I hate to say it, one more layer on our warrior. So when you feel like you finished all the darks in your sky, which I'm just about there, we got to do one more dark layer on top of our warrior. That's using our blue and our purple and our black, but it's going to be looking mostly black, pretty much as dark as you can get it without looking jet black. And that's what you're going to be using to fill in your warrior one last time with that nice pointed brush, because I know how much you enjoyed it the first time. So I'm just adding a little bit more texture over here in my mountains, and a little more dark to my ridges while I have my darkest dark out. Maybe adding a little shadow to some of these ridges here. A nice pointed brush. These ridges that are going over the top of the moon here. Need some dark, and then over here. I kind of ignored my left-hand side because it's such a far reach for me, especially in the awkward way that I'm standing. I'm standing like to the side of my painting. So the hardest spot for me to get is over here on the left-hand side. So it kind of looks like somewhat of a mess over here. But I think it still looks like you get the gist of it. It looks like there's mountains fading out into the darkness here. I think, maybe, possibly. So I'm using just a little of my dark over here just to accentuate those mountains. Little details, make them look more mountainy, make them look more jagged, a little more sharp. And I think that's it. I'm gonna play around a little bit and touch up where I feel like it needs to be just a little bit darker down here. But that is just about it. I'm gonna do my layer on my warrior. And then it's time for the last step. Woohoo! The last step might actually be the hardest step, because the last step is making those stars. And we've got two options for stars. We can do one, we can flick paint, which I don't really recommend because it can get on your neighbor and fly around all over the place. Or you can take your the tiniest pointed brush that you could find and just dot them on one by one, although you really don't want them to all be the same size. So I prefer the flicking method, and I'm going to walk you through it as best as we can. I might have to move my canvas back so I have a little more leg room between my canvas and myself here. But I still have to do that one last layer on my warrior before I start flicking, before I start flicking paint all over my house. So I'm gonna do this dark on my warrior, and it doesn't have to be perfect. We do want a little bit of that purple or blue purple showing through. I think that's kind of cool. I think it kind of looks like it's sparkling a little bit. Looks like it's got a little bit of highlight around the outside with some of that purple showing through. But the rest of it's gonna be jet black. A little purple on the edge. I'll hold it closer to the camera in a second so you can see. But I'm essentially using just jet black here. I'm finally made it all the way to my black. That's my darkest dark. And if it doesn't blend in perfectly with, the ground over here, I would recommend going over the ground a little bit with one more stroke of black or two. And I might just add a little tiny black to my sky too, like straight from the tube, not mixed with any blue or purple. In my one example, I got that little ribbon on the end, and I didn't do it on this one. And maybe I will, just to show you guys how I did it. So I got my blue and my purple. I'm gonna do that first, just to make like a little, make it look like there's a little breeze, you know. There's a little breeze blowing through, and that's what's creating the kind of this atmosphere of the moon, kind of creating a breeze. And I really don't like how my moon's glowing on camera. It's like glowing way too much over here. It's really not that white in real life. There's some pink here, and that really bothers me on camera that you can't see it, but whatever, it is what it is. So I'm gonna take some more black for my very last step before I start flicking some stars on there. And again, I'm gonna try to wrap it up in the next 10 minutes. But if you want to stay an extra, whatever, I'll stay online until as late as you guys want me to stay online to help you guys out. If you got any questions or need some tips or whatever. But I'm gonna try to wrap it up within the next 10 minutes or so, and provide you with some stuff if you need it. I think I'm gonna give it to one of your event coordinators. I'll give them the Microsoft Word document and the kind of step-by-step walkthrough in case you wanted to go back and do it again. But so you can see how there's a little bit of black. See how I'm using that black on top of that dark blue purple that I made and how big of a difference that makes. just this little bit of black at the very end to kind of fade things in and make things pop. I think it looks really cool. But we want it to be definitely jet black underneath where the warrior's standing, so it makes sense that he's jet black there. But as soon as you start fading in this part, you can let that black kind of fade out into your blues and purples and let that be exposed over here. I might put a little bit more jet black right here in the upper left hand and upper right hand corners, but I don't really need it. It is pretty black already. I think doing that kind of highlights the moon too. I think just a little bit more black here makes this look a little more highlighted. Highlighted. It's getting late. So let's say I'm gonna add just a little more dark over here, and I think I'm gonna call it completed, and then we can do our splatters. Do our splatters together. And I might, just because that side of the moon is bothering me, while you guys are finishing up your last couple touches up to your skies, I might fix my my moon just a little bit. Just a little bit of white over here, and then a little bit of magenta. I really don't have any room left on my palette. A little bit of magenta over here, a little bit of pink, and I'm gonna bring this back over here so you can see it, even though it's a little darker than I want it to be. I want it to be seen. This is kind of difficult because I gotta dodge my warrior now, but I really want you to see where my moon is. So I'm just accentuating the outside of it just a little bit. It's still tough to see. What the heck? This camera does not like to pick up on pink. So next time that we have an event, guys, I'm gonna fly out to you so we can do it in person. How does that sound? And then I'll actually be able to help you in person. Wouldn't that be something? In person, boy, oh boy. Sounds like a dream. One of these days. The mask mandate over here actually drops on Monday. We can stop wearing our masks over here. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it is what it is. I can actually see people's faces again. It's gonna be kind of cool. All right, so the very last step, I'm gonna run through real fast for some of you that wanted to leave right about now. So let me take care of business here. All I'm gonna do, I just got a clean palette here because I needed some space, because I'm gonna need to use just water and white paints. So I want to water down my white paints. Where is my white paint? There it is. I'm just gonna take straight white paint and water it down a little bit to like a creamy consistency, kind of like the consistency of eggnog, like a thick but liquid. Because straight from the tube, it's thick and it's not viscous. So I'm gonna mix it with some water until it becomes a liquid. But more so, I want it to be a thick liquid. Because if it's a real thin liquid, it's just going to come dripping off your brush really, really, really fast. So we want it to be nice and thick, and you got to test this out first. So flick it on something first before you go flicking it on your canvas. But you should be able to just tap the end of your brush, and you should be able to get various sizes of stars on your canvas. I want a little bit more, where you should be able to do it just with one brush full, but I got a bigger canvas, so it's going to take me more than one. So make sure you tap it and test it out first before you go flick it on your canvas. But you can use a tapping method, or you can hit the back of your hand. Sometimes that works too. I want a little extra stars by where the brighter spots in my sky are. And then if it gets on your moon, it's all gravy because your moon's already white. But if it gets on your warrior, you're going to want to black that out, which is going to be really, really simple. The only challenge is if it gets on your pink parts. Hopefully you got some pink left in your palette to cover up some of those extra pink stars that you just made. Because we don't really want stars on the mountains. That's the only place we don't want them. So I got a couple of stars on my mountains. If you catch them real fast, Again, if you got a wet paper towel, you catch them real fast, you should be able to just wipe them off real fast and have them blend in. And that's what I'm doing there. And it's the same thing on this guy. Sure, it comes right off. And that's actually the final step. So if you want to stop after that, feel free. If you want to take your time, I'm going to stay online for a little bit while longer so you guys can ask me any questions. But that's it. While you still have some paint on your palette, I would recommend signing your name in the lower right-hand corner, the lower left-hand corner. If you got a really long last name, just make a squiggle or just use your initials. Or wait until it dries and just use a Sharpie tomorrow. So, but long story short, I see some people are getting up and leaving, so I'm gonna wrap it up with my little spiel here. I mean, thank you very much for participating. Again, I'm gonna stay on for an extra 10 minutes, but thank you very much for participating. Be sure to check out my website, mrpaintparty.com. I'd love to paint with you guys again. You can see some of my fine artwork if you'd like to at dankayart.com. That's DANKAYART.com. That's got all my fine arts and my commission stuff that I do. I've done quite a bit of Mario art lately. So if you dig Mario Brothers, feel free to take a look at my website, dankayart.com, and tell me what you think. You can shoot me an email anytime. If you need help with this composition, if you feel like you fell behind or you want to just reach out, feel free to email me personally at dan@mrpaintparty.com. And it was really awesome painting with you.